Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to start our next panel discussion. We have a very, very eminent set of personalities sitting on the stage. To begin with is Mr. Ken Drover, Global Head of Defense for KPMG. Then we have Mr. M.V. Kotwal, who's the President, Heavy Engineering, Larsen & Toubro, and Chairperson of the FICCI Defense Committee. Can we have some order, please? I think this is becoming a bit of a nuisance now. Ladies and gentlemen, can we have a seats, please? I guess we'll have to get in security here. Bloody, what's happening? This is crazy. Can we have the gentleman standing in front of the dais to please settle down? Can you just go and push those guys into the seats here? People standing in front of the stage, can we, for the third time, request you to please settle down? Thank you so much. Okay, sorry, we'll start the introductions again. Ken Drover, Global Head of Defense for KPMG. We have Mr. Kotwal, who's a whole-time Director and President, Heavy Engineering for Larsen & Toubro and Chairperson of the FICCI Defense Committee. We're also happy to have Mr. R.S. Bhatia, who's the Head of Aerospace and Defense at Bharat Forge. We have Ms. Pallavi Shroff, eminent lawyer and senior partner of Amachandran Mangaldas, Suresh Shroff and Company. We also have President Rolls-Royce, Mr. Kishore Jairaman. And last but not the least, we have Mr. S.P. Shukla, President and Head of Group Strategy, Defense Sector, and the Chief Brand Officer for Mahindra & Mahindra. And last but not the least, we have our own Mr. R.J. Shah, who's the session chairperson. May I request Ken Drover to make his opening remarks, and then we'll start with the panel discussion. And just like last time, it'll be great if you can stick to a limit of about 10 minutes, maybe around 7-ish. I'll just give a small request to speed up, and by 10 minutes, we'll close it. Thank you so much. Over to you, Ken.
Testing. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for remaining. This has been a long day, and you've shown some great stamina to be here in the last session of the day, so thank you very much. Myself and the panellists this afternoon will be continuing a theme of vibrant Gujarat and a preferred hub for defence production, but we'll be looking at very much what we need to do in the future to make sure that we remove the impediments that will stand in the way of making this one of those preferred hubs. So I will set the scene for my fellow panellists, and what I'd like to do is a little bit different, is set the scene to say, what does the demand look like? What is the global outlook going to be? And so that we can position what it's going to require from Gujarat to be a preferred supplier and a hub. So let's look at what's happening across the globe. And there are 5 megatrends, or 5 key trends, that are affecting defence production around the globe. The first thing I'd like to say is there is the growth in emerging markets, particularly in the mints. You've got Mexico, Indonesia, Nigeria, Turkey, all experiencing double-digit growth in defence and looking to buy products. You've got domestic demand here in India. For the last 5 years, it's only been around the 1.2% compound annual growth, and for the next 5 years, it's projected at 9.8% compound annual growth. So you'll have something like 94 billion over the next 5 years in acquisition, plus another 147 billion in maintenance, facilities and personnel. So this is a very large opportunity here, so it's about getting the settings right for the future. The second point I'd like to make is the nature of warfare and security is changing, and we need to be able to be adaptable for that change. And these changes are driven by, in the global environment, some major megatrends around population growth, the rise of the individual, increased urbanisation, the porous borders, food, water, resource shortage, terrorism, cyber, and a whole lot more that will really drive the shape and nature of the industry as we move forward. The third thing, already seeing across the globe, are there 3 key sectors which are experiencing very much accelerated growth. And you won't be surprised, it's unmanned vehicles, space and cyber. And the fourth thing is, from the military perspective, the increasing demand in capability requirements. And this is driven by network-centric warfare, increased need for operational flexibility, multi-force compatibility, joint and combined force operations ability to do that, extended lifespans of equipment, and accelerated product life cycles. So this means that there will be an increasing emphasis on standardisation, modularity and flexibility of capability into the future. And the fifth thing I'd like to say that is important here is around the increased emphasis on affordable ownership of military capability. And this leads to a broad suite of ownership options that we must look at in any defence organisation, in any defence industry. Not gone are the days, but less and less are we looking at traditional procurement models where you just make and buy. Now we're looking at joint use development, and Joint Strike Fighter is an excellent example of joint use development. You've got multi-use aircraft. You look at NATO, they are leasing C-17 amongst the smaller NATO countries because they can't afford one on their own. You've got the lease of the Gripen aircraft in Hungary and the Czech Republic. You've got PPPs, particularly dual-use PPPs in the UK. So the Strategic Tanker Project is a dual-use project where it's a strategic air-to-air refuelling for the RAF, as well as a commercial airliner when it's not being used by the RAF, and like the roll-on, roll-off ferries for dual use. So these are the changes in ownership patterns that will drive different levels of risk. And I think industry will have to take greater risk and new innovative ways, and perhaps learn from commercial industries like pay by use, power by the hour. A whole range of different ownership options are going to come through in the future, which will entail different degrees of risk. So with that as the landscape, I'd just like to say that what we have to do is remove those impediments. That's the first priority, to remove the impediments to enable us to compete not only locally, but compete globally. And it's pointless being able just to remove impediments so that you can compete locally, because the market is a global market. And I've seen in many countries offsets and arrangements being squandered by not being focusing on being competitive globally as well as locally. So that's and the other thing is, I heard some various speakers talking about the time spans. Defence industry has got to think about very long-term visions. And I'll just give you an example, and I think Canada is a great exemplar in their NSPS, which is their National Strategy for Shipbuilding. It's a $30 billion project over 20 plus years. And by making sure that they have a strategy and a procurement that gives them shipbuilders certainty over the next 20 plus years, only then can you build a viable shipbuilding industry that is enabled to invest for the future rather than these short-term 3 to 4 year contracts. And I think this is where we have to look and develop defence industry for the long term. So there's my opening comments, and I'd like to hand over to my panellist to my right here, Mr. Kotwal, who is Director and President of Heavy Engineering at Larsen & Toubro.
We can all go there. Audible? Yeah. In fact, it is really nice that Mr. Drover has already talked about defense in a little broader aspect. First of all, let's come to the state of Gujarat. There are only 2 states in the country which can be directly by land, sea or air. One of them is Gujarat, of course the other is West Bengal. Gujarat is very much more vulnerable. So if we look at the need for defense establishments, very strong manufacturing base in Gujarat, obvious. Come to another aspect of defense business. Just to give you a backdrop, L&T, as you know, is a conglomerate. We are about a $15 billion company, out of which defense forms today a small part, maybe somewhere around 3%. But it has taken 27 years of involvement in defense to come to this level. I want to specifically stress this point because I see a lot of very enthusiastic people who want to get onto the bandwagon, mainly looking at the billions of dollars involved. But the other side of the story is, if you want to get into defense business and look at the Indian side of defense business and to develop that, I think it is a long haul. It is a marathon. It is not a 100-meter dash. When we began 27 years back, we were working along with DRDO, because that was the only outlet for a private company to really get into defense. And we developed along with them a host of prototype systems, the hard way, learning the hard way, developing from scratch systems. I'm glad Dr. Kumar in the previous session mentioned a few of the things. He talked about the Dhanush program. It was a unique program where all the specifications said was we wanted to launch a missile vertically from a ship. And the ship doing sea state 4 or 5, it's a very complex thing. No technology to go by. We did it entirely ourselves along with DRDO and the user. 3 of us got together. And that collaborative approach resulted in India developing a unique capability of launching missiles vertically from a ship. We have done same things for underwater capability of launching missiles. And as you know, we of course ended up with India's first nuclear submarine. And we are very proud of the fact that we as an Indian company, developing entirely an Indian technology, know-how, we built this the hard way. And today we have got thousands of engineers already ready and for this whole, the entire spectrum of activities involved. We have concentrated a lot on design. And this is the other aspect. I will come to what are the synergies therefore in Gujarat, because that is really the topic of the day. So you look at the whole spectrum. If you want to develop Indian capability, then for us, for example, I am representing an Indian company who has developed Indian technology and talent to a certain level. Yes, we are not yet capable of building complete platforms on our own. We still require the basic design. We are not capable of building entire submarines on our own. We still require the basic design. But to take that out, and then the rest of it is the entire capability spectrum available. We have got 7 different centers in the country already developing, and we have reached this level of around $500 million. Now we have put ourselves on a plateau where today we have got the capability to build these multi-barrel rocket launchers, which we are already doing. We are doing, of course, submarine work, we are underwater work. Then we are also building some systems which are electronic, communication, military communication. We have set up a system in Bangalore. So we have done all this over the years, and today we believe that we are better prepared. Coming to the state of the art in Gujarat, I can talk with authority because we established Hazira Works from '86 onwards. And today it is at Hazira. I would welcome a visit by many of you here who have not known it. In Gujarat, we have one of the world's largest manufacturing complexes, the world's largest. This is something which is built over the years, step by step, investing. What are the difficulties we faced? This is just a clue of what can happen. When you want to get into this kind of high technology business, it is not enough to have plant and machinery alone. It is not enough to have roads which reach there. It is most important to develop people. And it takes years and years to develop people. Now I'm talking of 2 types of ones. The ones which are technical, engineering, design, and the other is the workman level. In both cases, Gujarat does not have today the ready-made infrastructure. We therefore had to go the hard way, get people from various parts of Gujarat, and we developed these skills over years. It has taken time. It is now possible. But now we discover that having created this nucleus, it is possible to grow on that. So skill development is only one part. But then that culture, the culture of defense manufacture is completely different from what we do otherwise. For your information, at the same Hazira, we produce the world's largest reactors. We build them here in Gujarat and supply them across the world. That is a kind of skill, but we know the difference between that and defense. So we must realize that we need a very close attention to the building of this defense culture. And for that, we need a very close relationship with the institutes and the industry, which today, although it is going on, it is very much at the elementary stage. If we want to get into the next level, where we start designing our own systems, we need something which is core R&D occurring in the state of Gujarat. You'll find DRDOs in many states. I don't think there's a DRDO in Gujarat. Now what it does is, not that I want to either plead for or against DRDO, but it brings that kind of culture. There is a certain set of things which happen around it, and that is how the industry develops. Then we often hear of setting up defense parks. You set up a park. Now, seen commercially, it looks very attractive. You set up a large park, give all the facilities, get people in. But what are they in for? For example, there are a lot of underutilized capacity in the country today, existing in Gujarat, amongst MSMEs, amongst large corporates. It is underutilized. It is not being used for defense. Now, imagine that there is another park put up maybe a few 100 kilometers away. What is the incentive for people to invest again into another facility when their own facilities are underutilized? But there's a very unique use for a park. Today you will find that many industries lack in some specialized testing, for example, or some analysis. And those are the common facilities. Today they are housed under the whole umbrella of DRDO. Maybe, as we have suggested also to the ministry, let this be available on a commercial basis, or set up such facilities as common facilities which can be then shared across all the spectrum of SMEs, as well as MSMEs and the big players. Let me tell you one more thing. Many times it is misunderstood when we talk about big platform development or the design or make programs, for example. It is unfortunately the situation, and this I would like to very clearly say to the MSMEs. The make program has been actually put in place for developing futuristic systems, which do not exist today. It is not meant for making systems which are available somewhere and just put them around. That's not it. That's a different ball game. Today in Make India, the first program, the tactical communication system, has been announced and we were selected 3 years ago. Till now, we have not got a green signal to start. This is the first program. Then, so Make in India is sometimes confused with Make India program. These are two entirely different things. By Make in India, we want hundreds and thousands of component sub-assemblies to be made in India, give a large number of employment, job opportunities. But Make program is different. Now, if MSMEs want a share of the Make program, they have to imagine, will they be selected for development of the complete system for which they bear full responsibility for the end product? There will be such systems, and they should be reserved for MSMEs. But that will not give large-scale employment to MSMEs. MSME employment can come through offsets. I happen to have been the member of the Kelkar committee many years back when the whole issue was addressed, and I know the whole progression. Many things were talked about in the previous session. I must say, and I must say with due respect, they looked at one side of the picture as how it appears to US conglomerates coming here. But looking at the Indian context, the stories are not entirely the same. Because we spelt out 30% as an offset in the Kelkar committee, primarily because it's one of the lowest figures worldwide. And we had said very clearly, we wanted it only for direct offsets, which meant that defense equipment or parts thereof will be manufactured here. Subsequently, what I found is a huge number of foreign OEMs, and my apologies to Rolls-Royce is sitting here, but in any case, they sort of kept on hammering this point across to the government that, oh, offset should be, added to this and all those things should be added. It has diluted the definition of offsets. So today offsets are available as component level, which will be a good market for MSMEs or who doesn't want to get into the design part, but it will not be available for the big players in any case. When you're talking about billions of dollars, please don't be impressed too much by the numbers, because even in a $15 billion, which is what was talked about, you're talking about 9 billion as import. In that, 30% is what you're talking about. It's not a big deal for India. Let's not build whole mountains of strategies on offsets alone. What will really happen is when we start developing our own systems as a combination of the OFBs and the DPSUs, which have got tremendous capacity available today, some corporates which have invested a lot of money, and MSMEs to make together systems which will then go into platforms. That is the way to go, and that's what I would advise. Thank you very much.
Ken, I'm very sorry to interrupt. Actually, Mr. S.P. Shukla has to leave, so I was just wondering if we can allow him to speak before.
Certainly. I'd like to introduce Mr. Shukla, who is the chairman of Mahindra, and he's going to talk about Make in India, the role of states and private sector in the Indian aerospace and defence industry. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much for accommodating my request. And I'm not chairman of Mahindra. I'm only chairman of Mahindra Defense Companies. But I'm very happy to be in Gujarat. After graduating from IIT, and in a year when more than half the batch left India, I chose to stay on. And I came to learn business to Ahmedabad, studied at IIM, and by a happy coincidence, chairman of IIM Ahmedabad was also chairman of Mahindra Group at that time, Mr. Keshav Mahindra. Got my degree from him and went on to do things in India itself. A lot has been said since morning. Some you would have found interesting. Some you might have found boring. But overall, a lot many points have been made today by different people in their own way. I would try not to repeat now and try to say something which is different. One, and happily I have no presentation, and I can see some smiles. Good. We are the 4th largest army, 5th largest air force, and 6th largest navy in the world. 4, 5, 6. But we are the largest importer. Shame on us. Number 2. For many years, we had a kind of manufacturing apartheid, or if you want to use a polite word, separation, that private sector will not enter defense, only reserved for public sector. Happily that separation has come to an end, and in the spirit of partnership, private and public sector is to work together, and that is the only way. Point number 3. In every sector of defense industry in the world, you will find few lighthouse manufacturers. Lighthouse, as you say, you can see them from a distance. Around them, a whole ecosystem develops. I don't have to take names. When you think of aeroplanes, handful. Number does not go to second hand. Talk of submarines, handful. Number does not go to second hand. Talk of guns, handful. Number does not go to second hand. These are the industries where a handful of people serve as integrators, and everybody else becomes part of a large ecosystem. In India, we are going to need that. How to go about it is a difficult question. There are no ready answers, but government in its own way will have to bite the bullet and come up with the idea, how do we go about few lighthouse industries so that system can develop. We are a great believer that any large company depends on few hundred very capable, very talented MSMEs. Whether it is Mahindra Auto, whether it is Mahindra Tractor, both of whom are among the world's largest. In fact, Tractor is the largest in the world. We work with few hundred very capable partners in medium and small scale industry, and we bring it together. So headlight may come from somewhere, brake can come from somewhere, hubcaps come from somewhere, windscreen wiper comes from somewhere. We put it all together. India is going to need few such large players so that we can all come together as an ecosystem and make country more self-reliant in the matter. Coming to the states, most of the policies fall in central domain, but we are supposed to talk about states. So what do we talk about states? There are many things which actually fall in the domain of states which overlap with defense industry. Homeland security, electronic surveillance, sensor-based monitoring, they go very well together with many of the defense. States can play a major role rather than all the time saying it is central subject. A lot can be done by states. Let's take examples of 3 forces. And that's where states can start specializing. I'm trying not to repeat what has been said throughout the day by others. Let us look at the naval part of the defense. Natural advantage lies with few states which have a coastline. You cannot do any naval manufacturing in a landlocked state, say Haryana or Madhya Pradesh. So there are only 3 or 4 states who have the manufacturing capabilities and can work on naval part. Air Force related subjects. Most of it in India in foreseeable future will be components and subassembly. But if we were to ever think of developing in the long term aircraft industry, and by the way, Mahindra makes aeroplanes in Australia, if we were to make it in India, we are going to need access to the airports. So we are talking what state governments can do, and that's my focus, so I'm staying narrow. Theoretically speaking, land systems can be done anywhere in the country, but the states which already have a significant auto industry do derive advantage if you were to make armored vehicles. So that, because you need so many friends together, like in this room, it's friends who come together and build something. Nobody did it ever alone. So if you want to make an armored vehicle sitting somewhere in one corner of the world, you cannot. You will need so many people to give you so many parts, components, and subassemblies to make it all happen. Ultimately, it's win-win for all. It cannot be one. Same thing goes for electronics. States which have already developed electronics hubs, they will have an advantage in defense electronics also. Bangalore, Hyderabad come straight away to the mind. So if our state of Gujarat, and I do have a soft corner having studied and worked here, my son also did engineering from here. If state of Gujarat has to do this, a conscious effort will have to be made to create a hub, because people take people from one another, people change jobs. All of you have seen your person goes for better salary somewhere else, he comes from here. These ecosystems develop and they can have pretty loyal employees in technical manpower. One item which is very favorite subject of mine, and I do not know whether we have the audience from the state which can hear this, is defense manufacturing zones the way we have spatial economic zones. Current SC jets are export oriented. We have only one customer, and that is domestic. So SC jet does not work for defense. Unless you tailor a policy for defense, we do not have advantage of a wonderful policy instrument called SC jet. Mahindra had set up the first SC jet in Chennai 2 decades ago. And in fact, SC jet policy was formulated on that successful SC jet. Gujarat has been a leader in promoting industrialization. I think there is no doubt about it. Labor, power, personal infrastructure, electricity is all there. Gujarat is best with entrepreneurship, a large ecosystem of medium and small scale manufacturers, which is a blessing. So I do believe that there is scope for tremendous scope for synergy between Make in India, between Vibrant Gujarat, and between defense sector, three-way synergy, but we will all have to work towards it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shukla, for your insights.
Sir, can I take leave? I have to be at Global CEO Company.
You certainly may, sir.
I'm already half an hour late.
Okay. Thank you very much again.
Ken, again, sorry to interrupt. I think Kishore also has to go for the CEO forum. He's already late. We're running about 15, 20 minutes late. Yeah.
Does you have a...
I'm in the same session as him.
So if you can, if Mr. Bhatia and Ms. Shroff doesn't mind, perhaps you could let Kishore speak. Kishore, can you wrap it up in 5 minutes if possible?
Let me introduce Mr. Kishore, who's the president of Rolls-Royce India and South Asia, and he's going to talk about a collaborative approach to partnering to achieve innovation.
Thank you, Ken. Good afternoon. I know it's been a long day for all of us,
And I'll try to make my session really quick here. I wanted to share a few points, right? I mean, it was about partnering and growing through innovation. And when I look at innovation, only two things come to my mind. Number one, we have to create value. Number two, we have to capture that value. So innovation is about not only creating value, but capturing the value, which means whatever products you create, there's got to be a market. You can drive innovation through having a market and then creating the products, or create the products and then drive the market. And in either case, innovation is going to require some sort of a development of technology in manufacturing for products, in services, and in labor. And so when we look at all these things of products, services, and skills, it becomes extremely important that we don't look for very rapid or very large scale, but start incrementally improving what we already have. Today, we have a lot of capacity. We don't have capabilities to meet the needs of this country in the defense sector. As I go around and as I look at what needs to be done in this country, I look at the tremendous engineering capabilities that we have. But along with the tremendous engineering capability, what is needed is a system, a process that caters to the aerospace, to the defense sectors, which is not always automatically available. Collaboration is required, not only with foreign OEMs like us, but also with universities locally. Funds needs to be allocated for development work. All these activities have to be measured on a time scale, and at the end of which, an ecosystem has to come together. And that ecosystem can be created through partnerships, can be created through technology transfer, and can also be created domestically. We have done a lot of domestic work. What we really want to do is to make sure that we bring the technology here, we help create the ecosystem here, and we, Rolls-Royce, have been successful at it for about 80 years in this country. We have technology transfer with HAL. We make aerospace components with HAL that go to the globe. Tomorrow, when you fly an Airbus aircraft with Rolls-Royce engines, it'll have components that have been made in Bangalore. It took us a long time. It took us a lot of effort. It is possible. It is possible only through collaboration. It's possible only through making sure there is value creation and value capture that happens at the end of it. So, without much further ado, I just want to leave these things with you. Rolls-Royce spends £1 billion every year on research and development. We partner with universities. We partner with the government in order to create suppliers. We believe that the ecosystem has to be made. We believe that every country has a right to make in their own country. India has embarked on the Make in India program. We are totally supportive of it. Make in India happens in many different states. Gujarat is just one of them. Gujarat can be a hub for defense in the future, and Rolls-Royce will definitely like to be a part of that through collaboration and innovating products, services, and skills for defense. Thank you very much. Appreciate the time.
Thank you for your insights, Kishore, and we'll let you go straight away to the CEO forum.
Can I request Mr. R.J. Shah to please hand over a memento to Kishore?
I do apologize. My sincere apologies. Just try and be
It is not your fault. I'd now like to call on Mr. Bhatia, who's the President of Defence and Aerospace for Bharat Forge. And he will talk on the Defence Industrialisation Strategy.
Mr. Chairman, sir, ladies and gentlemen, we come to that part of the day when industry gets time to speak. And as it happens in most of the seminars, we end up speaking to each other. But it's always a good idea. We at least keep reforming our faith with each other. Most of the people who are associated with the policy are no longer present in the hall. Coming down to the point which I really wanted to talk about was the defense industrialization strategy. There's a very, I would say, peculiar situation in India that the defense industrial base and its capability are not aligned. If you take a look at Indian manufacturing capability, India's development capability, R&D capability, and what we do in defense are not aligned. Defense industrial base is far, far behind. Just to give you an example, as per the Zenov Consulting Company, last year in India, 250,000 graduate engineers and research scholars were working on R&D for foreign MNCs or MNCs. In all, there were 230 such centers in India. And in the last 5 years, they have saved close to $70 billion to the people who set up this in this country. But they were not working for Indian OEMs or Indian defense base. So what was lacking? Is the capability not there? I do have a report which was given by Deloitte, which was done along with US Council of Competitiveness. And it places Indian manufacturing at number 2 in the world today. So what is lacking? R&D capability is there. You have got the manufacturing capability, and this is not my report, this is a report published in the United States. And it says that the competitiveness in India will only continue to improve over the next 5 years. So obviously something is lacking. I think that part is what is called manufacturing ecosystem. Now Gujarat may be a great state to operate in and set up industry. But the fact of the matter is that the defense industrial base is based on a single customer. So if you really want to transform what is happening today, and what we heard a lot of people telling us that 64 to 70% of the total products are imported, what do you need to do the transformation? Actually, there are 5 steps to transformation. First, it's called that you must have a very clearly defined vision and mission. Second is what is called capability or the skill sets. Thirdly, you must have incentives, state incentives. You must have, followed by that, resources, which means capability, the factories, the infrastructure to take it forward. And lastly, you must have an action plan. If any one of these items are not there, there's going to be some kind of a problem. If vision and all is not there, what you will have is a lot of confusion. People will not know really what to do. If you do not have the skill sets, there'll be anxiety. Because you have all the orders with you, you have the opportunity, but you can't put it through. If you do not have incentives, there'll be a very gradual change. And if you do not have the industrial capability, there'll be frustration. And if there's no action plan, there'll be false starts. We've been dithering between false starts and a very gradual change all this time. So what we really need is to ensure that we have a vision and a mission statement. Why can't we come out with a statement that today, being 2015, by 2020, we'll reverse what is today called 70-30 to 30-70. Make this a mission. If when you made a mission that you want to send a satellite or a spacecraft to Mars, you were able to do it with very little money and in a very well-specified time. So why can't we have an industrialization strategy where we say Indian manufacturing will be so much percentage of total manufacturing? Let there be a quarterly report given by Secretary Defense Production to the Parliament stating how much manufacturing is being done in the country. And monitor that. So there is no vision and mission. Action plan. We have been hearing, we heard Mr. Kotwal talk about programs being talked about 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. Nothing has happened. Even if we bring in all the changes which Honorable Raksha Mantri said and Mr. Garg said, what will be the impact? An average program in defense in India takes 5 to 7 years from intent to start or finalization of contract. Manufacturing comes 2 years after that. So even if everything is put in place today, nothing is going to change for next 7 years. So how can we bring this change into this country so that we have some measurable impacts? Otherwise, Make in India will remain a dream. So what can we do? Why can't we just pull out 8, 10 large programs and say, okay, within next 24 months, these will be given to the industry. Let's take a look at it. That's called action plan. You put them into large integrators and see what happens with the small tertiary sector. It will automatically come up. That is the way to go about this. We really need to get to an actionable plan. Otherwise, I can assure you, sir, will be sitting back in 2020 or maybe in 21, because if it is done every 2 years, talking about the same thing and doing the same thing over. Gujarat is an excellent destination, but it cannot become a defense manufacturing destination unless the government of India provides what is required to create the manufacturing ecosystem in this country. Now that is the most important. Coming to offsets, I'll just give one point. I think we are all running short of time, and I'll try to save some time. As far as offsets were concerned, they were only brought into place to develop the defense industrial base in this country and expand it. If I give you the figure of offsets which have been fulfilled till today, only 18% of that went to manufacturing. Nobody says engineering services are bad. Nobody says anything is bad. By all means have it. But the aim was to bring it to manufacturing. We are talking about Make in India. What are you doing with offsets? 18% only went to manufacturing, 82% went to simulators and other things and training aids and FDIs and so many other things. We need to take a look at it, hard look at it. I would say that MSM offsets is one driver which can really give an impetus to the industry in this country. But ensure at least sizable amount of these go towards manufacturing. Nobody is saying that you do not bring engineering services into it, but bring them in such a manner that it should not become a hawala trade, or it should not be the normal Indian engineering sector is growing by a certain percentage. It should not be that whatever is the growth goes towards offsets without giving benefit to this country. So that's the only word of caution I would like to put. I have nothing more to say. I would say we need a real actionable plan if you want to see a change. Otherwise, we will meet again after a few years and we'll again discuss the same subject again. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bhatia. And I certainly agree. It's a proud day for India to be number 2 on the manufacturing. But unfortunately, the ease of doing business, we're number 142. 142. So there's an action plan right there to get from 142 to be in the top 10 there as well.
I agree with you.
So thank you very much again. And now it gives me, save the best to last. And I'd like to introduce Mrs. Shroff, who's a senior partner at Armstrong and Mangaldas and Suresh, Shroff and Company. And she will talk about dispute resolution framework in the Indian defence and aerospace sector. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, let me thank the organizers for inviting me to be here. Being a Gujarati, this was a very welcome homecoming for me. So thank you once again. So when I was asked to speak on dispute resolution in the defense sector, I said, what am I going to speak? Have you all heard of any disputes in this sector? Probably none. If somebody came to me and asked me, what do? I have this problem in the defense sector, I would probably, my first reaction would be, how can you litigate with your only customer? So I think I said, okay, what am I now going to speak? But I think even within the defense contractual system, and the ecosystem that exists in the defense industry, there is place for disputes. Disputes happen whether sometimes, even if you don't intend them to happen or you don't want them to happen. Given that the process of right from conception to even the tendering process to the evaluation and the award itself takes 3 to 4 years, and the contract negotiation takes the next 2 years, in larger projects, I think the first set of disputes that could at all happen, I'm not sure whether you would take it to court, but the first set of disputes that you could have are pre-contractual disputes, which would be the tender, the interpretation of the tender. Has your tender been rejected? If it's rejected, why has it been rejected? What is some misunderstanding or misinterpretation of the tender conditions or qualifying conditions? Secondly, so on these tender disputes, are the tender conditions relaxed specifically, or are they for a party, or are they so designed that it excludes certain parties and ultimately seeks to favor a couple of parties only? These could all be sort of tender-related disputes. Where would you take them? You would take them to the courts of India if you at all wanted to take them, and you would go to a high court by way of a writ petition. But interestingly, the approach of the courts in these sort of disputes is quite narrow. They would only look for arbitrariness, unreasonableness, if there's any particular bias, and more often than not, if it's a bona fide decision which could be justified, then the courts would give the government free play in the joints, you know. So it doesn't look very attentive, though a lot of other tender disputes go to court very regularly, and a lot of parties are quite successful. Then comes the award. You could have been awarded and you're defending an award, or alternatively, you are challenging the award to a grant of this thing. And such a situation I have personally dealt with in the defense sector. What would you first do if you were challenging the award? You are extremely upset, you were right there, number 2, but you got knocked off. My first suggestion would be make a representation to the government, make a very punchy, strong representation, follow up with meetings. I don't know if I should say this, but maybe a bit of a press strategy around it to create the atmosphere, create the hype around something that has gone wrong. But the legal grounds of challenge typically would be very few: illegality, irrationality, or procedural impropriety. And I have come across cases, again in the defense sector, where I've seen procedural impropriety, or how the rules got bent sometimes, you know, and procedurally wrong things were done. Again, I had personally advised not to go to court, to make very strong representations. They were looked at, and ultimately, I think things did sort of fall in place. But if you were to approach the courts, I think a couple of factors to remember. One, it's not an appeal against the decision of the government. What the courts would look at is only the decision-making process and not the decision. The courts do not substitute their decision for that of the government. And particularly if an expert body has been involved, then even the courts are even more reluctant to substitute the decision of an expert body unless you can show patent irregularity. If there are principles that are set out, discernible principles that are set out and followed in the tender process, courts are reluctant to interfere. Again, is the decision bona fide or a mistake, bona fide mistake, or is it deliberately mala fide? Is the decision so unreasonable that no reasonable man can sort of ever come to that conclusion? Are there any deviations from stipulated tender conditions? Have they been bent? Tests, for example, when you're doing field tests for products, are the conditions relaxed for a while, you know, or changed at that stage? These could be quite serious if you look at them at the end of the day. You could equally be defending an award in your favor, and these could possibly be the various challenges. The third set of cases that you could see, and you've been seeing a lot and hearing a lot of them, are corruption and bribery. And that is typically linked to the having or employing of an agent in this business. We've seen that happen again and again, where agents have been appointed, you discover later, or the government discovers later, you've acquired a company globally or from somewhere, and you realize that company had appointed an agent which you were not told of. There was lack of disclosure. Now what happens? You are stuck. The government could either say, now look, this is bribery and corruption, or they have some other proof and they unearth the whole thing. Two things typically happen. You go in for a CBI investigation, which is long drawn, very, very intrusive, time-consuming. As if that were not enough, following on the heels of a CBI inquiry and a charge sheet and a trial, you would have the Prevention of Money Laundering Act coming right after you to look at the investigation to see where the flow of funds are, to go after the funds and the assets acquired from the funds. You can have attachments, and ultimate, if you sort of lose, you can have sale of assets. So all this sort of is a very grim picture, so preferably not to do. Or your contracts itself can be cancelled. Though I think the government has taken a very, very pragmatic view. This government has now taken a very pragmatic view about blacklisting and terminating of contracts, and I think that's a very welcome do. Now, once your contract is awarded, or after the award, you would notice that there are different dispute resolution mechanisms, clauses. There are different clauses for foreign vendors, for Indian private vendors, or disputes between state and central PSUs, or defense public sector undertakings. There are all different clauses. Except I would leave out the PSUs, the central PSUs. Arbitration is the real rule of the game then. And the governing law is always the law of India. The venue of the arbitration is India. Therefore, what happens? Challenge to any award, if it ever goes down to that trial, will have to be done in India. So what happens if it has to be done in India? Typically, everybody, if you have a foreign party, you dread the thought of having to go to Indian courts, when there is a contract. Luckily, if it's in your favor, then you really say, okay, when can I get on with it? When can I do things? And yet you find yourself stuck in courts for 5 years, 6 years, just trying to defend yourself and saying, well, I did everything right, the award is in my favor. But I must say, the other sort of disputes that you could face are when there are typically three-way contracts. When you have a public sector undertaking, you have a foreign party, and you have an Indian and the government of India all in the same contract. And it's not unusual. And then comes the claim, who is the principal contractor? If you're a foreign party, you may be liable under the program of buy and then make. You have various people around you. You have the public sector undertaking who has to be your partner and who has to do a good part of the production. What if they delay and consequently you are not able to deliver on time? Whose liability is it? What are the indemnity provisions? These are very complex, even negotiating issues when you are negotiating, but a dispute, if it ever arose, I think would be quite a challenge in any case.
Pallavi,
also, there could be...
Pallavi, I'm very sorry to interrupt, but can we wrap up now?
Yeah.
Please?
The other could be the transfer of technology-related disputes, or you could have disputes if you're in joint venture or a consortium with your consortium partners. I think 2-3 things are important, therefore, that the arbitration regime, recent developments is that the arbitration regime is sought to be made simpler in India with the proposed amendments to the Arbitration Act. The ordinance was already announced by the government, and certain recent developments in the judicial system of the decisions of the Supreme Court have made it quite easy now for arbitrations to be conducted even if they were in India. But the judicial process is slow, and I think in overall, the attempt is always not to fight your only purchaser. Go make representations, make strong representations, and that's what you would do ultimately. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Shroff. Really just remains for me now to sort of wrap this up. The question was around the preferred hub for defence production here in Gujarat. There's certainly goodwill, there's commitment from the government of Gujarat at putting on this event, but we've also heard that there's been some impediments, and we need to remove those impediments and make it easy to do business here in Gujarat and here in India, and then Gujarat can certainly become a preferred hub for defence production and rightly deserve the term vibrant Gujarat. Thank you very much to everybody, and thank you for the stamina to stay to stumps. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for this excellent panel. Would request you to just stay in your seats for about 2 more minutes. And Mr. Adisha, could I request you to please present a memento to Mr. M.V. Kotwal? And Mr. G.I. Desai to Mr. Rajinder Bhatia. Mr. M.V. Kotwal first. Mr. Shah, if you could please. Mr. R.M. Parmar, could you please present the memento to Ms. Pallavi Shroff? And last but not the least, Mr. Shah to Mr. Ken Rover. What have we got against Mr. Kotwal here? Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause. You've been a great audience. Thank you so much. And with this, the day comes to an end. Thank you so much, and see you tomorrow. Have a nice day. Yeah. Can I request Mr. R.J. Shah to present a final vote of thanks, please? Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry, it was my mistake. Can we just request you to just hold on for 2 more minutes?
Ladies and gentlemen, I have to perform the sort of a duty of proposing vote of thanks on behalf of the organizers and the state government. In the morning, we have the defense minister. He agreed and came specifically for this function. So we are really very, very lucky that he is able to come for this function and able to listen also to the all the speakers and the suggestions also he has noted. So we are hopeful that we will definitely have a better procurement policy in very few months, as he has promised. We are thankful on behalf of the organizers to the Honorable Defense Minister. I also thank all the speakers who have been there in the morning technical sessions. And I thank all of them who have shared their views and given a lot of inputs for the policy also. Now in the afternoon, subsequently we have the panel discussions. We are very lucky to have the enlightened panelists, and we could able to get very good information. Not only that, we got inputs for the policy at the state, in national level as well as the state level, what state government should do. So I am thankful to all the panelists. And with the whole entire functions has been carried out by Mr. Amar Dubey, Head Aerospace Defense KPMG, and Sri Vivek Pandit. If I not honor them, I will fail my duty. So I request Mr. G.I. Desai to have a bouquet presentation to Mr. Amar Dubey and Mr. Pandit. Mr. Pandit, please. I thank all media personnel, ET Now, who will be present here, and I'm sure they will give the good coverage. I thank KPMG, FICCI, and IndexB, who have been associated with the Industries Commissionerate in organizing this seminar and make this seminar a success. I thank all my officers and staff of Industries Commissionerate who have carried out all these activities and made this seminar. Last but not least, I thankful to all the participants, particularly those who are present now. After so much long sessions, I thank all of you. And I also thank my Chief Secretary and Commissioner as well as the Principal Secretary giving me this opportunity to coordinate this important seminar. Thank you. Thank you again.
Last but not the least, I would also, on behalf of all of us, like to thank Mr. R.J. Shah. He's that silent person behind the scene who's been toiling for several weeks now. Mr. Shah, thank you so much. We're proud of you. Thank you. Good night.